You know, a lot of people say they want more money, a higher income, a new level of life. They learn, they work, they try new things, but somehow they stay in the same place, year after year, maybe with small changes, but not the real breakthrough they're looking for. And at some point, a question appears. What's actually stopping me? And most people look outside, the market, the economy, lack of opportunities, competition, but very rarely, they look inside, at something much quieter, much deeper, something that doesn't scream, but controls everything. The fear of a new level, the fear of more money. And here's the important part. This fear almost never looks like fear. It hides. Behind logic, behind realistic thinking, behind provisional thoughts like, that's too much responsibility. I'll have to maintain it. What if I lose it? People will expect more from me. I might change. And I'm not sure I'll like that version of myself. And if even one of these thoughts feels familiar, that's not случайность. That's a signal. Because fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And because it's quiet, you don't question it. You just accept it as truth. And that's exactly how it limits you. It influences the decisions you make, the risks you avoid, the opportunities you don't even notice. And most importantly, it defines what level of income feels safe for you. Because inside you, there is a certain range, a level where you feel comfortable, where everything feels familiar, predictable, controlled, and the moment you start approaching something bigger, something unfamiliar, that's where resistance appears. Sometimes it looks like procrastination, sometimes like doubt, sometimes like bad timing or unexpected problems. But underneath all of it, the mechanism is the same. You pull yourself back, not because you can't go further, but because deeper inside, it doesn't feel safe yet. So let's pause here and ask a real question, not a surface-level answer, but something honest. What would actually change if I started earning more? Not just the good parts, but everything. Would you feel free, or would you feel pressure? Would you feel calm, or would something inside tighten? Because your honest answer is the key. If inside there is more tension than ease, you will unconsciously avoid growth. And this is not a problem. This is how your system protects you. It always chooses safety, even if that safety is limitation. And this is where everything starts to shift. You don't need to fight the fear. You don't need to force yourself to be confident. That doesn't work, because fear is not your enemy. It's a signal. It shows you where you don't feel safe yet. So instead of trying to remove it, you create a new experience, a sense of safety, at a higher level. Let's take a step together, right now. Imagine that you are already earning more, not just a number, but a real level of life. And don't go into fantasy. Stay with the feeling. What happens in your body? Is there tension, tightness, uncertainty, or maybe calm? And if you notice even a small contraction, that's it. That's the hidden block. Not obvious, but real. And now, instead of running away from that feeling, do something different. Stay with it and ask yourself, what exactly feels unsafe here? Let the answer come. Maybe it's losing control. Maybe it's responsibility. Maybe it's how others will see you. Just notice. And now take one more step. Look at this fear, not as a problem, but as a part of you, trying to protect you. And say internally, I see you, and you're safe. And something subtle may start to happen. The tension begins to soften, not instantly, but gradually, because you're no longer resisting. You're understanding. And that's where transformation begins. Because the more safety you create inside, the more your upper limit expands, and the more natural a higher income becomes, without pressure, without forcing, without the feeling of, this is too much for me. And this is important. You don't grow through pressure. You grow through expanding what feels normal. And if something inside you resonates right now, even slightly, it means the process has already started. And that matters, because most people never reach this level of awareness. They keep looking outside, without realizing what's happening within a tree. So if this resonates with you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because here we go deeper than surface-level advice. And leave a like, so more people can see this and recognize what's really holding them back. Because most of the time, it's not a lack of opportunity. It's a lack of internal permission. And remember, anything is possible. And now, let's go even deeper. Because next, we're going to talk about how to stabilize this new level and stop falling back into old limits, even in familiar situations.